Okay, let me.
Okay.
It could be under play also.
I think it's recording now.
Yeah, it's recording now. It's recording now, Dr.
So
Hassan.
we can start now.
Okay, inshallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Farah Hassan along with Dr. Osman Attar from Muslim American Youth Initiative. We've been doing this series on mental health, breaking barriers, and today is our third session. Our topic for today is depression and suicide. And before we start with the topic, I would just like to mention that both Dr. Attar and we decided to approach this topic with a different perspective rather than doing it in an academic way, bringing in a lot of technical terms. I think it's important to make it relatable to people who actually suffer and talk about the causes and the symptoms and give them some kind of a first aid kind of a treatment also through the session. Though definitely if it's a severe case of depression, then they need to see a professional person. But for now, we will be just giving in this session some tips on how to cope with these emotional distress signs and symptoms that they have. So starting, moving along, I think, I want to invite Dr. Attar, and if you can, Dr. Attar, give us a definition of depression and what does this term entails with it. So go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm glad to be back here with Dr. Hassan. If you want to talk about depression in layman's terms, it really refers to deep sadness, abnormal sadness. So the type of sadness where you feel completely hopeless, helpless, a burden on other people, like you feel like you're moving slower than usual. It's hard for you to concentrate. Your body is in a fog. All these things are what refer to depression. So we have, obviously official criteria that we use as psychiatrists and psychologists to diagnose major depression. But, for the sake of, the audience who is not in mental health, that's a good way to put it. So, obviously a lot of people may feel like they're depressed when they're just sad, but really you need to have this state of mind for more than a couple of weeks. So, all of us have bad days. Like one day I may stub my toe and, whatever, like I have to ice it, or I may get into an argument with a family member and then feel bad for the rest of the day. But depression is really about deep sadness and feelings of worthlessness for weeks. And at times it can get so bad that people feel like taking their own life. So I'm glad that we're going to be talking about suicide as well. Dr. Hassan and I, we really want to normalize talking about depression and suicide and all types of mental health topics within a Muslim audience, within a Desi audience, so people don't feel shame, because there's a lot of shame around these diagnoses. A lot of people will say things like, your faith is weak, or, you're not doing enough, you are ungrateful, there's something wrong with you, which that's not helpful to think like that. And these are illnesses, and, it's an illness just like diabetes and hypertension. So why do we treat depression any different? It's not a moral failure if you're depressed or anxious or you are feeling suicidal. All of the prophets had struggles, and at times they felt like they wanted to give up, including our noble prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we need to stop being judgmental about these topics. So I just wanted to mention that first and foremost, and I'm glad that Dr. Hassan as well has a very non-judgmental approach. So Dr. Hassan, if you wanted to add anything about that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Attar. You know what? You mentioned some very important points, and I would like to talk about one of them especially. You said state of mind, and then a person is actually acting and behaving in a certain way. But most of the time, when you look at people, and when they come to you, it's very rare that people are actually that depressed overtly out. I mean, like in their manifestation, that they are not able to do certain things. I mean, there is that population for sure, but a lot of times it comes as a surprise to the family and the, where they work in workplaces, that people are doing their normal thing and they are socializing also, and it seems there's nothing wrong with them, but they are suffering inside. And that manifests suddenly when you hear that so and so person attempted to commit a suicide, or they did commit a suicide. And that we have seen in a lot of situations with celebrities, because that becomes a big news, but that is happening to a lot of people. So what would you like to say about that kind of a behavior where we can't actually see there is a depression, but are there any manifestations that can be the red flags in those situations?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, for lay people and even for mental health counselors, it can be really hard to diagnose if people are not forthcoming about their symptoms. But I think it's, in terms of when you should start worrying is, like the way that people speak is usually a good indicator of how they feel on the inside, right? So if somebody is complaining more than usual about their life and they are saying things like, I just have nothing to look forward to and I don't see the point of this and I want to give up, then you should take that very seriously. You should have a conversation with them, because if you are that supportive friend who can say like, look, I'm worried about you and I just want you to know that I'm here, that can make the difference in somebody's life. That can make a huge difference to somebody who feels like they're alone or nobody understands them or they don't want to be a burden. Just that somebody, I have a friend who has been struggling with mental health. And the one thing that I noticed about them is that their voice just seemed like more subdued, right? They weren't speaking very clearly. They always seemed like they were sleepy or tired, or not very energetic. And then when they started treatment, like their voice dramatically improved. You could sense joy in when they were speaking. So it's these subtle signs. I would say, like, the quality of their interactions with you, and if there's sudden changes, if there's statements, and if obviously, like, if anybody ever says to you at any time that I feel like life is not worth living, then you should take that very seriously. And you should have a conversation with that person about that. And we can talk about next steps as well, Dr. Hassan.
Definitely. And I think that this applies to suicide as well, because some people are not going to come forward and say, oh, I mean, obviously, again, I'm just saying majority of the people won't come forward and say, oh, we want to take our life and I'm going to go and commit suicide. It just starts with small complaints here and there, or feeling that they are not worth, life is not worth living, or they don't have a purpose. Those small things can become big things, and we need to pay attention to it, especially to our loved ones and to our friends around us. A lot of times I've seen that uh, people are not very, like you said, that they don't talk about it that easily, because it's a stigma, and they feel that there is something defective in them, and it's a sign of weakness. But with all these thoughts also, there are people who approach their friends or family members and they try to talk about, but people get very tired or exhausted listening to their complaints. They say, oh, you're complaining all the time, or the response is always negative. It's never I want to create awareness on the other side as well, that people, when you see that some family member or friend is coming forward and trying to talk to you about a certain issue that has been on their mind or bothering them, or you feel that they are emotionally distressed in with this situation, then do give them time and your support, because they are coming to you for that. They are not going to say openly, because of all that entails with it, like that it's a defect in us or it's a weakness. But it is, I mean, they do approach, and the response, because unfortunately, because people are not very aware of this fact, they feel that this person is a complainer, or he or she is very sensitive. All these, my clients keep on telling me that we keep on hearing this from our friends and family, and it makes our situation worse, and that's why we don't talk to anyone, and then they go deeper in that dark hole. So I think that
That's
is,
very true.
that's important. I just have
That's
a,
very
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Heather.
well, no, I was just saying that's very true, Dr. Hassan. I think it's very true that a lot of people are shamed into being quiet about their depression.
Yeah. And 1 second, I think, give me one, I think, I don't know why it's not letting people in, because okay. So, so this is one thing that I really wanted to talk about, because I feel that there is a lack of understanding on the side of the family and the friends. And please do give time to people who try to talk to you or call you, maybe try to understand that maybe they are in some kind of a need or help. And then we were talking about, there is nothing wrong with the faith. And I would like to bring at some point, our Quran tells us that how to interact with people, and the attachments that we have with the world. And a lot of healing is there, which I think I'll wait until we get to that part. But before that, I would really like you to talk about the genetic and the biological causes of depression.
Yeah, I would be happy to. So basically, there's a number of neurotransmitters in the brain, and when they are released, they can help us with our mood. Like dopamine helps us with drive, it helps us with movement, motivation. Acetylcholine helps us with memory formation. There's also norepinephrine and epinephrine, which help us with the fight or flight reaction. And serotonin helps us with feeling good about ourselves. So sometimes there are certain people who just have less serotonin within their neurotransmitter system in their brain. So what I want you to think about is basically like if you had a diagram and there were two ends, like a pipe, right? And the pipe is broken in half. And the chemicals that are released between those two pipes, like what I'm mentioning, the serotonin or norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, that influences your behavior to a certain extent. But I would also like to say that, as scientists, we don't know as much as we think we do about the genetic and biological causes of depression, but most of what psychiatrists do right now is based on what I'm talking about, which is called the neurotransmitter theory, that our behavior is influenced by neurotransmitters. One thing I would just like to add, Dr. Hassan, based on our understanding as Muslims of the Quran and the Sunnah, we also know that our behavior and our personality is also influenced by our soul, right?
Mhm.
So there's certain hadith, like the Prophet ﷺ said that your souls are aligned with each other before you're born, and when you meet somebody that you're very inclined towards, that means that you were together in the life before, like the alam al arwah,
Right.
the world of the soul. So there's something else going on here, and we definitely also believe in the existence of a soul. But that doesn't mean that depression is not just like a soul problem. It's also a problem at times with your neurotransmitter system. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
I'm glad that you made that distinction, because I was going to, come to that point. And, I've been trying to study a little bit. There is a big hype of Islamic integrated therapy. And, so I'm trying to understand our own religion and how it can help in the mental health, process and healing. So you brought a great point of the soul, and and then even if we don't go that deeper, like the spiritual aspect of it, if we just remain on the surface and see what our religion in Quran, there are so many things that are mentioned, that how to be, to keep everything in balance. So I'm going to give causes of depression from the psychological perspective, which are situational and circumstantial. And those causes definitely come because of when we are not there, like we are not truly evolved to that part that we can cope with difficult situations. So one thing is definitely attachment and expectation from people, and Quran keeps on telling us to don't have expectation from people, only have expectation from Allah Ta'ala. And attachments keep on saying that don't get attached to the world. And here I actually just very recently, I was reading Nahjul Balagha, which is compiled letters and sermons of Imam Ali. And I came across this very brief, it's a short saying, which I don't have with me, but what it was beautifully explaining attachments. So it's not, he's saying that it's not that you have been given life, which is a blessing in itself, that you don't enjoy life, that you don't enjoy your loved ones or your friends or relatives or the things of life that life offers, but it's keeping maintaining a balance. And then he said that attachments, when they get to the point where you become dependent on them, when your source of happiness or depression or sadness is coming, or hurt is coming from the attachments, then the attachments are becoming unhealthy. And another important thing he mentions is people who understand Urdu, because I'm going to name three terms, and then I'll try to explain in English as well, that he uses three terms in that saying. He said, be careful, because there are three phases of your life which you are going to lose eventually: ahbab, turab, and hisab. So basically, ahbab signifies our life in this world, with our relatives, with our friends, all the social circle, people that we come across. We, all of us, are going to lose that at some point, even though we can have parents now, or there is death as a finality, as a reality. So we are ultimately going to lose that. So turab means going back to dust. So we go into dust. That is another reality. And the final reality for us is hisab, which is accountability. So he says that as long as you keep in mind your accountability, uh, then you will not get attached to the worldly things to that extent that they start affecting you emotionally and psychologically, which is a great thing. I think it seemed like I've found the, you would say, secret of being grateful in this world, in this life, and also being comforted that such noble what do you call that, such noble sayings are there, which can pave our way towards comfort and peace. um, I think this was great. And then so from my perspective, like from the psychological perspective, attachments, unhealthy attachments with things and people can actually lead you to depression, because you might not be able to get exactly what you want, and that can start affecting you emotionally and mentally. And the other thing is, we are so pressurized, all of our youth and adults, to conform all the time. Individuals are trying to conform to this or that. So when a child in this Western society is trying to conform to the Western society, then they're trying to conform to their own culture and religion. And even I've seen in our Desi social circle that women are trying to conform to, there are different stratas of socio-economics, I would say, stratas that I always come across. And everybody's trying to kind of move higher in that strata and trying to be part of it, and being to feel belonging. And those things are creating so much conflict in people, and so much emotional upheaval in our youth and in our adults, that there is such a chaotic situation. And it definitely leads to ultimately depression, because we are trying to pursue things which is a never ending kind of a pursuit, because when we reach this level high, there will be another level to achieve. So all of these things I think are there. And if I'm not, I wanted to mention another thing, which is obviously you took the biological causes, and I would like to mention the postpartum for women depression, and even men have postpartum depression. So we need to understand that there are certain biological situations also which are very genuine, very real. It's not that a woman is lazy, doesn't want to take care of the baby, or a man is aggressive person and he can't deal with the situation. We need to explore more, because they might be suffering from postpartum depression. So anything you want to add to this?
Oh no, I just thought that was wonderful. I think the saying by Imam Ali was beautiful.
Thank you.
That it was ahbab, turab, and hisab, right? That's very
Right.
beautiful.
So the three
I think
phases,
that's,
yeah, ahbab, turab, and hisab. That's true. Yeah.
mashallah, yeah, that's very beautiful to think about. And I like how you mentioned postpartum depression. I forgot to mention that myself. And finally, what you're saying about conformity, I think the biggest thing that Desis we struggle with is log kya kahenge.
Yeah.
How many times have we just heard that? So many times ki is tarah se raho, aisa karo, log kya kahenge, and how much that limits our potential and our thriving in life. Some cultures are more into conformity, some are more into individuality. It's probably best to have a balance, right? The best of both worlds, where
Yeah.
you're into family ties, but you're not into it so much that you're limited into how you want to live your life in a healthy manner. So thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Hassan. I think, all these factors play a big role. The way that I like to think about depression sometimes from a psychological or social aspect is if you've existed your whole life as a sphere, like a ball, if somebody's trying to put you into a square peg, then obviously that's going to be painful, right?
Yes.
If you feel like you're a misfit, if you feel like you don't belong, that can be very painful. That can be traumatic. There's also a question from the audience, I think from Mustafa. I couldn't read it, but
you want me to read it? If you were to give
sure.
advice to someone who may be thinking about making changes in their life today to create good habits, to decrease the likelihood of having depressive symptoms that stem from a psychosocial aspect, what would it be?
That's a really good question. I can take a stab at it, Dr. Hassan, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that I would advise such a person is something called behavioral activation. So this is actually a psychological technique that Dr. Hassan knows more about. But if you're starting to feel depressed, then this technique is basically that you should force yourself out of your comfort zone in order to experience sensational qualities that will help you feel better. So for example, people who are depressed like to spend a lot of time in their rooms with the lights off, under the covers. And that's actually only going to make you feel worse because your body will not be stimulated. So it's actually, you're avoiding sunlight, which is a natural antidepressant. You're avoiding exercise. You're avoiding meeting people. You're avoiding experiencing new things. I mean, a lot of this can be kind of hard during the pandemic, but this is, springtime right now, such beautiful weather. And a lot of my patients won't even take advantage of it because of their depression being so severe. So to encourage someone to be physically active, like Neha is saying, exactly, like that can be a huge lifesaver. So the other thing that's interesting about depression is that people will often try to make themselves feel better, but they'll use like shortcuts, right? They may use food, which is easier to access, and it doesn't require a lot of effort on your own part to feel better. You just eat something for comfort, or they may use things like, TV binges or complaining. But the harder thing is where the reward is, like taking care of your body, exercising, gratitude journals, Just, you know, focusing on positivity, focusing on what you have that is better. Like the Prophet ﷺ said that when it comes to the dunya, look at people who have less than you. And when it comes to your akhirah, look at people who are doing more than you, right? So if somebody is consistently looking at people who are less blessed than them in terms of this dunya, then it really helps to put things into perspective. Because another thing that I think is a cancer in our society is the amount of comparisons that happen
Yes.
on social media, like FOMO, fear of missing out, like, oh, these people, they go out, this guy has a girlfriend, this guy's married, they have a child, what do I have? And you may not realize what you have because your social circle is so limited into what you're experiencing. So I know that was a very long answer, but Dr. Hassan, please feel free to add.
You know, I think you very comprehensively explained it. It's I think all of the aspects that you mentioned, that feeling gratitude and exercising and all of those things are very important. I would just like to add one thing that, uh, first of all, if a person is trying to, you know, do this kind of a thing where they need to improve their habits and trying to avoid the depressive symptoms, they are not in depression yet. Because in depression, people are not motivated to exercise or even go out or do certain things that can relax them. But if you are not in that phase yet, it's a good thing that you seek therapy and explore the kind of a person you are, because that will give you an insight to how you feel, how you react, what are the things that affect you, and how to cope with difficult situations that are you know kind of you would say relatable to you. And so because everyone is different, and this can provide a huge opportunity for the person, this therapy, to which is called life coaching, we can call it as well, or improving the lifestyle. And they can, but there is this thing in a little bit of spiritual therapy in Western spiritual therapy also, when we try to find our own essence or our own authentic self. Once we find our own authentic self, which in our religion also is the same thing, then we kind of our perspective on outside things starts to change, because we accept a lot of things happening externally which was difficult to accept before we were able to understand who we are. And then we, first of all, then most important thing is that we stop feeling negative. We don't have any negative opinion of ourselves. So when we improve our self-esteem through identifying who we actually are, what are our religious beliefs, what are our cultural traditions and all of that, and what is our purpose in life, this gives you a lot of strength. And to find a purpose in life is the second big thing after finding who you are. So when you work on these things, then you bring yourself to a point where you unravel your own potential. And which is very important, because most of the time people get so wrapped up in all this criticism and judgments coming from people all around them, that they kind of forget who they are, and they feel and they start feeling actually what other people are telling them, and it affects their self-esteem. This brings me actually to another very important term, which is called learned helplessness. So learned helplessness is, it goes side by side with depression and learned helplessness are one and the two thing, one the same thing. So if you want to take this and you want to explain, Dr. Athar, learned helplessness, because it's very important. It's a very tricky situation where people fall in that trap, and then it's very hard for them to get out of that learned helplessness, and they are never able to help themselves to rescue themselves from that dark hole that they fall into.
Yeah, I think that's great, Dr. Hassan. I'll definitely give it a stab. So what I want you guys to imagine in your mind is a small child stuck in a well, okay? So on the sides of the well, there's a staircase that goes all the way around up to the top, so they can actually get out of the well and go out into the real world. But they're stuck in this dark well, And as an example, you know, there's a bunch of people trying to get the child out, but you know, they are not encouraging the child to actually use the stairs, and the child themselves is not using the stairs. The people on the outskirts of the well are just saying, "You're okay. You're gonna be fine. Everything is okay. You'll be okay." You know, just giving us like statements like this. So learned helplessness, I think, in this model will be like the child has learned that they are getting a certain amount of support by being stuck in this well, and they are not using their own resources to actually climb the stairs to get out of the well. And what that means is that there's a certain amount of positive feedback that the child is getting, or you know, the adult, whatever, the patient, for feeling depressed. You know, when you're depressed, of course, people will see that and they'll check on you, they'll pay attention to you. You get to adopt a sick role where people are concerned about your behavior. But sometimes that can be so attractive in terms of the attention and care that you're getting, that you're not actually taking the effort to use the steps to get well. So that can be, you know, pretty dangerous, and you're just going to be stuck there on the bottom of this well, where if you actually took the effort to get better, then you could get out and feel, you know, really realize your self potential and actualize yourself, like Dr. Hassan is saying. So that's how I would describe it.
Yes, and it's you know, just to add a little bit, that repeated failure, you know, and when people around you are trying to convince you also that this is the only outcome that is for you, then you learn, you become complacent in that situation, and this learned helplessness is very, very predominant in domestic violence. Though it seems like a different topic, but it's not a different topic, because it also has a lot of depression in it, because you know, the person who is in that kind of a relationship, who is the victim, is going through a lot emotionally, and then becoming you know, helpless, hopeless, which are main signs of depression, leading to learned helplessness, because then they stop struggling to get out of that hole. And that is that they never able to, they don't realize that they have a potential to get out of it. So that is what I was trying to, you know, mention previously, that to unravel your potential, you need to first of all learn who you are, what is your authentic self, and then move on to empowering yourself and then using your potential. So I think that we covered you know, some of the very important aspects of depression and the causes. And anything else that you would like to add in the treatment, Dr. Athar, because there is a notion amongst people that, you know, the medications that are used for depression actually can cause suicidal thoughts. If you want to just mention some, elaborate on.
Yeah, I can mention that a little bit. There was a study that said that antidepressants make suicidal thoughts worse, but in general, psychiatrists do not really give much weight to that study. What really is happening is at times, people who are severely depressed, when they start medication, have the energy to actually have thoughts in the first place, but there's no link between taking antidepressants and committing suicide at a higher rate than the normal population. So it's not going to make you more suicidal. They're safe medications. Medication is not the only answer, but it is the only answer when your depression is severe enough that you are actively thinking about how to kill yourself. I would say that. So, you know, just like you mentioned with anxiety, everything exists on a scale.
Right.
And there's no harm in taking medication and accepting that help if you need it. I think in general, we live in a society that's very tough, and a lot of people need help that they're not getting. We live in a society where people struggle with loneliness a lot more than they used to. Things have become much more competitive.
Yes.
You know, all these things, all these factors, they are making us feel worse. We live in a society where normal, healthy diets are not promoted, where work-life balance is not promoted, where you know, there's little justice for a lot of people. There's not much fairness. There's not much support So obviously, that's going to affect all of us. And it may mean that a lot of us are depressed and anxious. So in the short term, I think it's important to focus on individual health, but we also need to focus on health of society in general and why people are feeling this way more than they used to.
Yes, and it's becoming more and more actually because, the pandemic is not making it easier for anyone. So it's
Exactly.
more. Let me see if there is a question or we can then.
Mustafa had another question. I'm sorry, I just can't read it because
So he's saying, just as a follow-up, have you two noticed there is a higher incidence of anxiety in patients who are depressed?
No, Mustafa, no worries. I think that's a great question. So, for those of you who understand Urdu and Arabic, depression is about gham, and depression and anxiety is about hum, right? So gham, jo guzra hai pichla, like everything that's happened, that's what you feel depressed about, right? Your past. And anxiety or hum is about the future. Hum is how you say anxiety in Arabic. So basically, yes, depression and anxiety go hand in hand, and it's very common to have comorbidity or both conditions exist together. And the reason that is because people who are depressed and anxious tend to have a lot of trouble focusing on the moment. So, that's where mindfulness meditation comes in, where people are able to get over their past and stop worrying about the future and really just focus on this minute, this hour, this moment. And that is usually much healthier for people in general because the reality is that, none of us can change our past and none of us can actually control the future at all, regardless of how we feel or the illusions that society gives us about control. So that's how I would describe that.
And definitely, I think in the pandemic, Dr. Arthur, this is the biggest thing that we have to think individually for ourselves because now we know that we can't control anything outside of us. So if we have to improve our state of mind or our emotional well-being, we need to do things on our own. And a lot of people I see they have started painting or gardening or taking long walks or trying to read a lot of books, which was not we didn't had time before this. So it seems like that now this is what you're saying, that we can't control anything outside of us. Things are going to be the way they are and they will take their own sweet time, whether it's a situation or it's the people. But definitely we can think for ourselves and try to do things which comfort us and try to stay in this moment, because the more we think of the future, which is so uncertain and you can never for sure say what's going to happen, can create a lot of anxiety, and that can lead to a lot of depression because you feel so helpless in that situation. So I think having said that, we have covered most of the treatment that can be done. I would again little bit kind of go over it, that please connect with each other, connect with your friends, connect with your family members, make sure of each other's mental, emotional well-being. Because of pandemic, it's our meetings are restricted, but do connect and see these red flags that we mentioned. If somebody is feeling low or somebody is trying to reach out to you again and again or want to talk about something over and over, so maybe something is bothering them. Or make sure that if somebody is talking about that they are worthless or they are a burden on in this life or something like that, which is very negative, make sure that they are not thinking of ending their life. And if someone says that they feel like ending their life, then please take it very seriously. Don't ridicule him or don't joke around with him because or her, because somebody saying that needs to be taken very very seriously. Anything else that Dr. Athar you would like to talk about, especially suicide? Any input that you want to give to people?
I think that was a great summary. I wish all of you a good day and plenty of health, physical and mental, and ask all of you to continue to make dua for Dr. Hassan for her great project and how much she is doing for the community. There is one more question.
Okay.
Do you?
Let me see. So not trying to find a definitive answer, but would love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Quran, Islam being a gift to mankind from our Islamic point of view would be an early tool to alleviate our depressive and anxiety predilection? So
I think, I think Mustafa, I would also like, I think someone has been on mute.
someone has,
So, so I think Mustafa, the best way to think about this is a topic called spiritual bypassing,
Usman,
and I think you
Dr.
should
Azhar,
look into
just
that.
give me 1 second. Let me, I think someone has their microphone on. There is a little disturbance. If you could please me. Yes. I don't know who is there.
Should I go ahead now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, for Mustafa, your first question, I would say that think about spiritual bypassing. This is an important topic that we should really discuss, maybe in another session even. But spiritual bypassing, basically it means that you use spirituality to bypass your emotional problems. So you say things like, if I read this much Quran, or if I, become a Sufi, or I do this zikr, then it'll help me with my emotional problems. And that's not always the answer. It can definitely help, but you have to be in the right mindset. If you are using religion as a band-aid, it can backfire, especially if you have really negative thoughts about yourself and about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's a lot of religious people who believe things like Allah, is angry with them all the time, or they believe that if they don't do wuzu correctly, then they're going to hell, or their namaz doesn't count, and they become obsessive about these things. Of course, our religion is ritualistic, but I think the answer to healing when it comes to Quran and Islam in general is to understand religious and spiritual concepts in a deeper plane, right? Like, I love what Dr. Hassan was saying earlier about Imam Ali's statement about ahbab, turab, and hisab. So if we can all actualize the fact that we're going to die and our life is a gift, and we will face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what we do, then that in itself, if we really meditate on that, that can be a huge healing to a lot of people. And I just don't think enough people are doing that. I think all of us have become a little bit too obsessed with worldly things, and we need to take a step back. And like Dr. Hassan said, the pandemic was a huge benefit. In terms of the second question, and Dr. Hassan, please let me know if you'd like to jump in at any time.
Yeah, go ahead.
But the second question, the gender differences, they do matter. So women and females in general, they tend to use their support networks much more readily. So they'll talk more about feeling bad, like, look, I don't feel good, and I need a girl's day, or I need to go to the spa with you guys, or whatever. I mean, I know I'm using stereotypes, but just work with me. So, but men in general, the masculine traits, they tend to encourage people either through society or through biology that you need to deal with it on your own. So talking about your emotional problems is weakness. So in general, women tend to be much better at helping themselves when it comes to depression and anxiety, because they have those support networks. It's men who actually suffer from suicide much more than women do, because they're alone and they don't reach out. And, in general, people don't really care about mental health for men that much, to be honest with you. I don't know why that is. I mean, there's several thoughts that I have about that, but as men, we should be more accepting of other men suffering, and we should be able to help them. Like, it's not a weakness. It doesn't mean that you're not a man. Everybody has issues, And if somebody comes to you with that, you know, like if they hear from you like you're a sissy, they're going to shut down, you know, they're not going to respond positively to that. So there is a gender difference, of course. The women do suffer from depression and anxiety more than men do. That could be related to hormonal changes, but men suffer as well. And it could be that men just don't speak up, and that's why the statistics show that women suffer more. So that's an interesting question as well.
Yes, so I think that we basically covered everything for today's topic. And I would like to thank you for your constant support, Dr. Athar. This is really, really important, this mental health for me. And I've realized that it's also very important for you. And the more we can reach out to people and the more, you know, we can build this connection with a general public so that they can benefit from these sessions. I really hope so, and I pray so. And before I go, there is a quote by someone that I don't remember, but I would like to say that because I would like to mention this quote, which gives a very nice perspective of gratitude when one starts feeling depressed about not having a certain thing or not having a certain person in life. But so the quote goes like this: that instead of grumbling that the roses have thorns, I am grateful that thorns have roses. So it's just the flip side of the perspective that can totally change our mood and our emotions. So I would like to thank everyone who has joined us today. And inshallah, we'll be bringing in one more session in Ramzan, which is right around the corner, and it will be on spirituality and healing. Hopefully, I'm looking forward to Dr. Athar's support in that as well. So
Inshallah.
inshallah. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care and Khuda Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.